Coming up on this episode, I'm joined by my fan-sided colleague Luke Duffy. He's current site editor over at Valley of the Suns. We spoke everything to do with the Phoenix off-season, the recent signing of Tyus Jones, what that could do for their starting lineup, the potential role for Bradley Beal next season, what the expectations are in Phoenix and what may happen if they aren't met, including the potential of Kevin Durant. Trade rumors starting back up. Could he rejoin the Warriors again at some point in the next 12 months? Who knows? We'll also speak plenty about Golden State and the rest of the Pacific Division, the possible hierarchy of the 5 teams heading into next season. But before that, Luke is Irish. My family descends from Ireland. I wanted to pick his brain a little bit about Irish sport. Plenty of Olympic stuff covered, a bit about Gaelic football and hurling, the latter of which I didn't even know existed until a couple of weeks ago. If you're not overly interested in that, then maybe flick forward to the 9-10 minute mark of the episode, but I suggest you don't because it was a really cool and informative conversation. He also told me about his experience in London last week, where he was sat behind Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant and had a long conversation with Steph and basically became mates with him. So that was really cool as well. But before we get into it, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. You can follow Luke over there as well at Luca Lockhart and check out his work at Valley of the Suns. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for listening or watching. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the podcast, Luke. Now, last time we were talking, I think it was just before opening night of Warriors Suns at the start of last season. Fair to say both seasons didn't go totally according to plan for the Warriors and the Suns. Now, you're just telling me off air before there that you are coaching a basketball team as well. How are you guys faring at the moment?
Well, thanks for having me on again, Peter. Delighted to be here. How we're doing is the season is over and we're getting into the second season of me as the coach now. So last season, we made the final 4 of what was a 10-team league. I'm not bragging now, but that was my first season as a coach. We had goals to get to the final 4, and we did. And in the semi-final itself, or like the final 4 weekend, we were the 4th seed against the 1st seed. And to be fair, they were just a better team than we were. Gave it a good go, but came up short. So that was the first year. So have a lot of the same players coming back. I've been doing it's the summertime here now, so it's the off season. But there's been a lot of interest in getting in the gym once a week to just sort of train and stuff like that, which has been a lot of fun. So hoping for even better in year 2. And I'll be back on next year to tell you once we've won the trophy. I'll have it with me as well.
So that you don't think you're getting sacked, fired anytime soon? You're pretty happy with the first season?
It was touch and go. It was, I wasn't sure sort of how it worked. But no, I haven't had a chat with the team and sort of the club itself is called Malahide. There's people who sort of run the club and stuff. So no, I think they gave me the seal of approval for one more year at least. Bit like I've lasted longer than Frank Vogel, which is pretty cool, to be honest.
Very good. Well, we are going to chat plenty of Phoenix basketball. But before that, I wanted to indulge in my own interests a little bit. Obviously, watching plenty of the Olympics at the moment. I am obviously Australian, but my family descends from Ireland. O'Keefe is an Irish surname.
Sure
and
is.
I'd like to think I know a lot about sports around the world, but to me, Irish sport, there is a vast range of stuff going on there. And so I just wanted to dive into a little bit about Irish sport because I'm super fascinated. So just a couple of questions. First up, the Olympics obviously going on at the moment. What is Ireland's go-to? Watching Australia, our thing is swimming, right? I try and watch as much swimming in the first week because we win a ton of medals and then it's all downhill from there, essentially. I'm watching a few of these sports. Ireland play a bit of hockey. I saw Daniel Wiffen, a swimmer, win the 800? No, it wasn't 800. 800 the other night. Yeah. When Ireland go to the Olympics, what's the go-to? What are you focusing on?
So traditionally, going back 30, 40 years and even maybe 2012 as well as when I was sort of a kid, and I can really remember that in 2008, boxing is the big one. I know that whole fighting Irish thing might be a bit of a stereotype. Yeah, exactly. But certainly boxing would be our go-to. I would say if you asked an Irish person who are most famous, maybe famous is the wrong word, but our most successful like sporting export is, a lot of people would say Katie Taylor, who had amazing success as a boxer in the Olympics and is now professional. So boxing is generally the one that we go for. Already we have won bronze at least in boxing with a woman called Kelly Harrington, who won gold in Tokyo in the same 64 kg weight class. But you're right, swimming has sort of come out of nowhere. Daniel Whiffen, who you just mentioned, won gold, and Mona McSharry, who's another swimmer from Ireland, she won bronze the night before. So, we're a small country and swimming is a massive sport. So it's not something we've ever, I think 94, possibly? 96, sorry. Oh, not, yeah, 96 anyway, was the last time that we won a swimming medal. But yeah, so they're the two at the moment. And then rowing, for some reason, we've had good success in the last couple of Olympics. And believe it or not, and again, you'll have me on and it'll sound like I didn't know what I was talking about, but we're quietly confident we actually have a couple of athletics, a mixed relay team and women's 400 meters, and 1500 meters as well, actually, that we're confident we might get something in. So not too bad, to be honest.
Yeah. And what is like the biggest sport in general in Ireland? Because I find it funny how people, everyone's watching the Olympics at the moment and, everyone's saying, why are Australia so good at swimming and they do this and they do that? But the funny thing to me is like what I would classify as our two biggest sports aren't in the Olympics. And that is Australian rules football, obviously our own code, and cricket are both not in the Olympics. So what's the biggest sport in Ireland at the moment and historically?
It's not basketball, unfortunately. I wish it was. I wish I had more people to talk to it with. It is like football, soccer football, and the English Premier League would be very big. And then you have there is an Irish league as well. And there's a whole, you should support your own league and not support another league. That's a conversation we won't get into that some fans like to get into. I like both. You can like both Irish and English football. There's nothing to say you can't. So that would probably be the most popular. And then below that, there is Gaelic football, which some players go to the AFL from Gaelic football, and there has been an international rule series between yourselves and ourselves. That doesn't happen anymore, but
I think it might be coming back. I don't know if you've heard anything over there, but I always look forward to that because it's kind of after our season and it's something to look forward to in the off-season kind of thing. And there can be, it gets a bit fiery and testy.
It certainly gets spicy. It does.
Yeah,
and it's cool because some of the players, it's not quite like an all-star team, but like of the Gaelic football players in Ireland who would never get a chance to play with each other, they come together to play Australia. So that's pretty cool as well. So there's Gaelic football and hurling are the two sports, Indigenous to Ireland, and they're our sports. So they would still probably lag a little bit behind football, and then below that again, I would say rugby. But Gaelic football and hurling are the two that we're the most proud of.
Yeah, well, I know a fair bit about, I'm not sure about the viewers, but I know a fair bit about Gaelic football just because obviously, as you said, we have a bunch of guys come over here and play Australian rules football and do pretty bloody well at it. No doubt about that. Tell me more about hurling because I think I saw a few highlights for some random reason on my social media, on Twitter, in the last few weeks. I don't know, is that because the championship game was just on or the playoffs or what is hurling? Because I was watching some of the highlights. Again, only highlights for a minute. It looks like a version of lacrosse to me, but with Gaelic scoring and stuff like that. Just give us a basic rundown of what it is.
Of course, and again, if I'm rambling here because I could talk about it all day, please do stop me, Peter.
No, go for
it. I think Jason Statham, I forget the name of the film, he once described hurling as a cross between hockey and murder, I think was the line he used in the film, which is pretty cool. So hurling is it's a 15v15 sport that's played on a pitch that's the same size as the Gaelic football pitch. The All-Ireland final was just on recently, which is probably the highlights that you saw because BBC this year kind of made it. I think they showed it live for the first time ever in Britain and UK. So that was pretty cool to see the exposure. So it's a 15-on-15 game that's played by. There's not every county in Ireland is good at it. So you can only play for your county, the county in which you're born in. You can't swap them. You can, but I won't get into that. But you predominantly just represent your county, and even below that again. And I'm not sure if it's the same in the AFL. There's millions of clubs or thousands of clubs around Ireland. So if you go to a small place in Galway or Mayo or wherever it may be, the club is the only thing in the town. So that's all. They just eat and breathe hurling or Gaelic football in the club, and then to represent your county beyond that is the greatest honor, because these people don't get paid for what they do, which is, when you see some of the hits they take, certainly the hurlers, it's crazy. The All Ireland final, like I said, was just finished. Clare beat Cork in the final, which was a super game as well. I would very much encourage anybody to watch. If there's one game you're going to watch, it's that one. It was absolutely brilliant. There's no sort of, you can't have a super team because you have to play for the county you're from.
Yeah.
People take a lot of pride in it, and in terms of the rules itself, certainly lacrosse has some similarities to lacrosse. You hear that all the time. A point is over the bar is 1 point, and a goal is 3 points. And some of the distances people can hit, the slitter, it's called, the ball's called slitter, are ridiculous. I was only ever a goalkeeper when I was a kid because I wasn't very good, so they just stuck me in goal.
Fair enough. Just lastly on that, you speak about it being kind of amateur and guys don't get paid, and that's often why a lot of the Gaelic footballers come over to Australia and play Aussie rules. We don't get the kind of money, obviously, that American sports do, but I think Australian rules is probably nearing, like, an average wage would be nearing enough to $500,000, which is obviously more than enough to live off and do professionally. How close are, Gaelic and hurling, how close are they to being professional sports?
I think we could spend all day talking about this. I think part of, not the appeal, but the ethos of the GAA, it's called the Gaelic Association of Ireland, is that there's like a pride in it being an amateur sport. There's no talk of that changing, and I don't think it will change anytime soon. Like the typical Irish person who plays Gaelic football or hurling to a high level generally has a job like a teacher, for example, is a great sort of career to have, because you have summers off and you have evenings off in theory. So like people who even might play for Galway or Limerick or Cork and then might work in Dublin, they drive home the 5 or 6 hour round journey each week to train with the team as well, which is ridiculous. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, to be honest. It should, I think, because of what they do, but I don't think so.
Fair enough. Well, we'll wait and see what happens. Fingers crossed, because I think, you get to that kind of, it is, I'm sure it's an elite level of sport, and as a result, they deserve to get remunerated as such. I hope people enjoyed that conversation, but I'm sure plenty of people are more looking forward to the basketball part of this episode. I want to start. So I saw on your Twitter last week, you went to the USA Women v Germany women game in London. Looks like you sat behind Steph Curry. Are you mates now? What was the go? How was that experience?
Well, I had looked into tickets to go to the men's game, and they were crazy expensive. And luckily, my girlfriend is a big basketball fan as well. She plays, she watches. So because of that sort of, I watch both the NBA and the WNBA. It's like whatever's on, we'll just sort of watch. And she's a Liberty fan. So when we knew that Ionescu and Brianna Stewart were going to be there, I looked at the tickets, and to sit in the second row was, like, relative to the men's, which was in the tens of thousands. It was not that. It was considerably cheaper. So I said, like, why don't we just go as sort of a once in a lifetime experience? Now, I never could have predicted that what would happen next, but I did notice a few empty seats in front of us about midway through the first quarter, and then there was like a bit of a scene and a commotion and stuff. And Steph Curry and Kevin Durant just arrived, which was ridiculous. And they sat directly in front of me. One to the left, directly in front of me. And the security said to me, all of us, like, look, they're just here to watch the game. Leave them alone. They don't, just leave them be, basically. And I promise you, Steph Curry would not stop talking to us. We kept on looking at the security as if to be like, he's starting these conversations. Like, so don't be giving out those. Man, he was just so cool. They got like complimentary food and stuff, and he was talking to us about mayonnaise and ranch dressing and the differences in America. And I was like, this is the most surreal experience of my life. All while Asia Wilson's having a fantastic game, I was like, this is like far exceeds anything I could have ever imagined sitting here. And I think, what I don't want to say for sure, Durant was to his right, and he was less chatty. He was very polite and stuff, but he was sort of on the phone, and he had a friend with him. But it looked like he FaceTimed Draymond Green at least once during the game. Now, I could be wrong, but I was sitting pretty close. I could be wrong. But he was on FaceTime for a little while as well. So that was very cool. And then Angel Reese came and sat in between the two of them, which was just, again, bizarre that just like this is all happening in front of us. So Yeah, it was very cool. He said hello to us when he said hello. My name is Steph when he was shaking people's hands, which might be the most insane thing anyone's ever said to
Yeah.
anyone. It's like I know who you are, and yeah, they went before they left as well at the end of the game with the team. They got to go that way. Like he said goodbye. He said thanks for chatting to me about basketball. He was asking the fans to quiz him on like who played for who. So Nafisa Collier of the Minnesota Lynx, when I say he didn't know, he was embarrassed for a minute because he was like, "Oh God, I should know this," but he got there eventually. But yeah, he was cool.
And I just want to rewind. So KD was FaceTiming Draymond. Is that what you just said?
That's now I'm probably get aggregated. But I never thought in my life a guy sitting in Ireland could get aggregated, but it certainly looked like that's what was happening. It
There's a
certainly looked like.
storyline there.
Yeah,
There's a storyline that Warrior fans might try and
I look forward
run
to
with
looking.
about.
I look forward to looking at Blue Man Hoop now in the next 6 to 8 hours and seeing what appears there.
The repairing relationship between those two before they perhaps become teammates again, as plenty of Warrior fans would probably hope. Anyway, you are covering the Phoenix Suns, and I wanted to get you on because the Suns have been busy over the last few days. Tell me about Tyus Jones, because he was a player that I would have liked the Warriors to target. Not that we had the financial capacity even to sign anyone at the moment, but potentially if we make another trade and then have Tyus Jones lined up afterwards, whatever it may be, ends up signing on a minimum contract with the Suns, which is, I think, the most valuable pickup of the offseason. And I don't know if there's ever been a role player to me that has signed with a team who it instantly makes me feel different about the team, like in a way that Tyus Jones does with the Suns. I don't think I've ever felt that with like a genuine role player before. Like, how long were you writing about this? How long for the Suns, like, was this a possibility before it actually happened?
When I say never or not really, it seemed so ridiculous. Much like you saying you never thought there was a way the Warriors could get them because of the financial situation they're in. I felt the same way about the Suns. He would have been honestly like the dream pickup, realistic dream pickup of the offseason. If you'd asked me 2 3 weeks ago, who's the player? Tyus Jones is the player. So I'd mentioned him a couple of times, but more like in a, wouldn't it be amazing? That's something that like is a dream. And then he just kind of kept sitting there. And I think obviously with the new CBA and stuff, he just almost felt like the odd player out who kind of got squeezed out of making more money on a longer deal. So yeah, not very long. And then when it happened, like Monty Morris was one thing and a very good thing, in my opinion. But my God, Tyus Jones is another level altogether. So I've certainly had a lot to write about since he was announced. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think once Gary Trent Jr. got that minimum contract with the Bucks, I was like, okay, so this is kind of the level of player who could get a minimum. And when Tyus Jones is still sitting there, the longer it goes, the more I'm thinking, yeah, he could also be had on a minimum. And then I start writing and talking on this podcast about, well, if Utah really want Brandon Bajemski and the Warriors, if they do give up pods, need a backup point guard, if they can line Tyus Jones up on some kind of deal, like as the backup, and then like trade pods and then sign Tyus Jones immediately, like that would have probably been a dream situation to get Markkanen and then Jones obviously to replace Pods as that backup point guard. What does it do though for the starting lineup? Because in his little statement that he released shortly after confirmation of him joining the Suns, he kind of suggested that the opportunity to play, in the starting lineup kind of thing is that going to happen?
Well, I think there's almost like a Suns civil war on social media now, fans about like what this means because although he might start a game or start games rather, I think closing them is a different situation, a different story. So starting, I suppose, with will he start the games? I think there's a possibility. I think that raises a lot of questions about what that means for Bradley Beal, or I mean, if it's a starting five of Jones, Beal, Booker,
KD,
Nurkic and Durant. How could I forget? Like like that can be scored on. That's not the best defensive group you've ever seen. So
Yeah.
that's a worry. So even if they start and not he doesn't necessarily finish games, but then the flip side of that isn't the whole point of having one of the best like table setters, backup floor generals in the league, so that when things slow down and things get harder at the end of games, he can create. So I do anticipate he'll start. He might even start opening night, but I mean, Josh Okogie started opening night last season, so I don't know that that's a long-term prediction on how it'll go. But it's a good problem to have, certainly.
Yeah. Well, you've wrote about the possibility of Bradley Beal coming off the bench next season, which I think makes a lot of sense as kind of a would be the best six man in the league, even in the kind of diminished version that he was last season compared to obviously when he was at his best back in Washington. Is that realistic? Because I just see the optics of this guy's making $50 million. Just for that, like, you cannot have this guy coming off the bench when he's making $50 million. I know when the Warriors pushed Clay to the bench, like, I'm sure Steve Kerr kind of waited for that, because a large part of it is, hey, not only is he a franchise legend, one of the best players we've ever had, but he's also making $43 million. And that is instantly a storyline when you're pushing a guy back to the bench who's making $43 million. And in this case with Bradley Beal, he's on $50 million next season, isn't he?
Yeah,
At least?
it's 160 for the next 3 seasons. So
Yeah.
I think that's 50, 53, and 57 or whatever way that breaks down. But yes, it's 50.
Yeah. So, like, is it possible?
No, I don't think it is. You're right. I think that the optics of it, and it's asking a lot of Bradley Beal, who I would feel a bit of sympathy for, who was traded for last season as like the third star. And then it's, can you be a bit of a point guard sometimes? And now it might be, hey, can you actually be like, you're not a small forward, but like, can you completely change your game again? So I don't think, I mean, I wrote about it because I'd like to see it happen. And I think if the best case scenario for the team to get to the highest level, I think that should happen. It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to ask him to do it, and again, the money and what that would look like coming off the bench as well. But then, as I tried to sell it in the piece as well, I mean, he is 31. And I'm older than that, so and by no means am I having to go at somebody who's 31. But I mean, his injury history and stuff. Obviously, 53 games played last season in the regular season, and he actually ended strong. Like, if you could sell him on, look, you can be the best six man in the league, and we can like play you 25, 30 minutes a night to make sure that come the postseason, you're the best version of yourself that you can be, and that you can close games. Now, I wouldn't like to have that conversation with Bradley Beal and try and sell him on that, but that's probably the route I'd go with it. But I do think it's unlikely, shall we say.
Well, I do wonder how much, obviously, well, I know that the whole like Clay moving to the bench would have no doubt impacted his desire to leave in free agency in the end. Obviously, there's the whole financial aspect, but by the sounds of the reports, the Warriors had kind of told him, hey, we're looking in a different direction. We're looking at pods, probably starting next season, you coming off the bench. It's funny because like Bradley Beal's under contract, as you said, for 3 years and $160 million. What's the alternative for him if you tell him he's coming off the bench? Like, if he requests a trade, who's going to trade for him? Like, I don't see, like, I think that issue is eliminated somewhat in comparison to Clay when, like, no one's going to trade for that guy. And I just look at that starting lineup you mentioned with Jones, Booker, Beal, Durant, and Nurkic. I don't know how that can be average or above average in defense whatsoever. Like KD would be your best defender, and KD is a good defender. There's no doubt about that. But even when he was a really good defender at the Warriors, he wasn't the best defender because they always had Draymond. And I just think relying on a 35, nearly 36-year-old Kevin Durant to be your best defender, that doesn't scream great news to me.
No, it's not a recipe for success, and that kind of brings up the other question of Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal, who were both re-signed and brought back. I would say they're probably, when I say underrated defenders, I just think relative maybe to the perception around the league, like they're okay defenders. What does that mean for them now? It seems crazy to say the Suns have too many guys after how last season went, but I struggle to see even they can defend for stretches at an okay level. Where do they fit into all of this as well? So you're right. I mean, defensively, I think the Suns were between 10th and 13th in the regular season in defensive.
I think they were 13th. I heard on podcast.
13th, yeah,
they were above average, which is kind of surprising.
Which is straight. Does that mean Frank Vogel was actually doing his job more than we think? Maybe he was, and I think Mike Budenholzer is certainly going to have a more free flowing. We'll figure out the defensive end later. Let's just try and outscore opponents, which was always sort of, I suppose, the game plan for having these three players. And we'll just worry about defending later. But you can't do that. I mean, the Minnesota Timberwolves exposed that really badly in the playoffs, and like they were hammered, obviously. So yeah, I don't even know. Like there are no more fixes that I can see. You brought back again Josh Okogie. Like, okay, that's fine, cool, but that's not going to move the needle
You're
defensively.
not necessarily going to have him out there in crunch time.
No, exactly. And like Nurkic, who like I think last season was as good as it's ever going to be for him in Phoenix. He stayed healthy. I think he only missed 6 or 7 games. He tries. You could never fault him for effort, but like when you see him out there with Rudy and Towns in the postseason, you realize he has limitations. So I think that only gets worse as well, which might sound a bit negative, but I just don't see how it gets better for him. So it's going to be a big struggle on that end. And Tyus Jones doesn't fix that, obviously. So where do they go from there?
Yeah, it's a wait and see. I was gonna ask you about the changing head coach. Obviously, Vogel gone after 1 year. Budenholzer in. Like that even increases the defensive concerns that I have, because Vogel obviously has been known as a defensive minded coach. Budenholzer probably less so. Is there any other like major impact that you think that will have on the team next season, or is it simply a case of they're just going to be buying in on offense even more and on defense even less, and they're just going to be trying to beat teams 140 to 130 kind of thing?
I'm like, again, if that doesn't sound too negative or of an outlook, I do think that's what they're going to lean more heavily into. Let's outscore everybody, but it's not going to work in the playoffs. Certainly, it's not going to work every game in the playoffs. Like the West is the bloodbath. Like the first round matchup, no matter who it is, if the Suns can even get there, which I think they will, but like that's going to be tough. So yeah, unless they can surprise us, or Budenholzer can surprise us with a defensive scheme that we didn't anticipate, or we've never seen before, but like that wasn't going to be used with these players in the past. I don't see how they can be like even again above average on that side of the court, and I don't think the only surprises, unfortunately, are probably going to be negative on that side of the court as well. If I had to guess right now,
yeah. I suppose part of the Vogel decision might have come down. Like there were plenty of reports following the season, once you lost in the playoffs, about unhappiness around the team, and a lot of that centered around KD. Where is that situation at? Because I'm sure a lot of Warrior fans, again, going back to your little Draymond FaceTiming KD story and vice versa, whatever, I'm sure there's still plenty of Warrior fans out there, like myself, who hold out some hope. Like I've got a bit of KD memorabilia behind me. I'm sure there's some of us that hold out hope that there could be a reunion in the works at some point. And there was murmurs of that following the Suns' elimination. Now that seems to have quietened more recently, but like, is there a chance that could come back up at any point, do you think? Or do you think it's dead and buried? And Kate, I think he's under contract for another 2 years, I believe. Do you think he'll just see it out and that's it? Or is there a chance that this blows up?
I should have asked him, shouldn't I, last week? I should have just tapped him on the shoulder and said, like, what's the story, man? I need
You
to
got
know.
your answer with Draymond and him FaceTiming each other.
Yeah, that's true.
You didn't need to ask you.
Like there was those Houston rumors to start the offseason, and then around the draft when picks were moved, like Phoenix's picks were swapped in the deals with Brooklyn and Houston as well. It's kind of died down, and I don't know if that's just because it's the Olympics, but I think with Kevin Durant, and he kind of said it himself in an interview not so long ago, he said, like, it's really easy to put my name in trade rumors because it just is. So it'll always happen. So I think there'll be more before the start of next season, definitely. And if the season starts even slightly badly, like I mean 4-7, straight away he's the name that will be brought up. But also, like, Bradley Beal has that no trade clause, and nobody wants him, I wouldn't think, on $50 million a year. And they're not going to trade Devin Booker, because if they're trading Devin Booker, then this is all over. So Kevin Durant becomes the easiest name to put into all of these rumors, and because of his history of moving teams, which obviously we're both aware of, like it's an easy exercise, and it's one where you can at least go, well, maybe he's unhappy here, maybe he wants to do this, maybe he wants to do that. Would it surprise me if he actually left the Suns in this, like, the next 12 months? It actually wouldn't, and I don't know what that says about where the Suns are now or where they're going, but only just because maybe nothing surprises me anymore in the NBA, and certainly with Kevin Durant. So the rumors are gonna, as soon as the Olympics are done, and he was fantastic against Serbia, he was so good. As soon as the off season is done, or the Olympics are done, excuse me, I think it'll be straight back to could he play here? Oh, him and Tyrese Halliburton look very cozy one time. Maybe he can go to Indiana, and you'll be like, what the hell? But yeah, I think those rumors will come back.
Yeah. It's for Warrior fans, I think that's a part of like a lot of us are looking at the moment. If this Markkanen thing doesn't happen in the next week, by the reports suggest that he will sign an extension in Utah and take himself off the trade market, possibly for the full season if he signs after August 6th. And of course, plenty of conversation around, well, what's next kind of thing. Do you look at Brandon Ingram? Do you look at, taking on Zach LaVine's contract, whatever it may be? I think, what you've just said there kind of tells me and shifts my opinion on the Warriors to thinking, just keep the powder dry, keep your assets, and then if KD or another genuine superstar becomes available, that's when you push your chips in again. No point. Like, I think Markkanen's a star-level player, and I think the Warriors are going so hard after him more just as much because of the fit as how good he actually is at basketball. But like guys like Ingram, like he isn't necessarily a good fit, and he's not a good enough player to make a huge difference to the Warriors where they're going to be, suddenly championship contenders or anything like that. So what you've just said, like the potential of this thing, blowing up again kind of thing, tells me that if the Warriors can't get Markkanen and, nothing else happens here in the next few months, maybe wait and see if things start badly next season in Phoenix, and maybe you can take advantage of that because you talk about Beal and you talk about Booker. KD is really the only one there who you could recoup some assets with, because Beal, no one's giving up assets for him, and Booker, one of the franchise's best ever players at this point, really, drafted there, homegrown. He's probably not going to get dealt. So KD is really the only way to actually recoup some assets. But in terms of this conversation, like, what are the expectations on Phoenix? As we talk about all the potential defensive issues, I find it actually difficult to envisage them being a whole lot better next season than they were last. Like, what is the expectation here for this team, and like, what's the direction they pivot in if that's not met?
Matt Ishbia, the owner of the Suns, said at Summer League, I believe it was, that this is like a 2-year window where they're at right now heading into next season because of the being in the second apron, and that's around the time when, again, Durant's current deal comes off the books. It'll be in his final season. So if you think of it as a 2-year window, the first year, and he said like the first year doesn't count basically, like, that's not a long time to win a championship, and that has to be the goal. You don't trade for Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal and not win a championship. And yeah, I agree with you. They're not. I only wrote recently there are 7 teams at least who are still better than the Suns, and I kind of stopped at 7, and I probably could have gone to 9 or 10.
Like in the entire league, you mean?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. East and West, yeah. So, but the goal has to be a championship. I mean, even if they got like a competitive first round series next season, that's not good enough. And yet, I know Denver might have taken a step back, but like Oklahoma, Minnesota, they're not going anywhere. Denver's still very good. I do think that they're in a better position than the Lakers for what it's worth. Maybe Suns fans are just like that I say that because I do. I'd rather be the Suns than the Lakers right now. But I think there's some similarities to the Warriors in that, and I don't think. Do you think a championship next season is on the cards? I think that may be very optimistic to think that, but
yeah, not as presently constructed. And I think Draymond Green's even admitted that, like, they're going to go into next season not necessarily as a championship contender. Perhaps if they make a move, like if they do get Markkanen, then all of a sudden, like, the Warriors have done a good job of kind of pivoting here and getting a lot of valuable role players in D'Anthony Melton, Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson. They're going to be very helpful. It's not necessarily going to lift them to top 4 in the West or championship contention or anything. So I don't know. I think it's less so about championships for the Warriors when you're talking about, obviously they've won 4 in the last 10 years and they've repositioned them, like, financially. What they've done this offseason would suggest that we're more about the flexibility moving forward than we are a championship or bust next season kind of thing, because they have got themselves not only under the second tax apron, but the first apron as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I think the Suns, similarly, like, I think the roster is better than last season, but like, I remember when they got Yuta Watanabe last season, I actually said he was the dream pickup last time out after what he'd done in Brooklyn. So then they've gone and gotten Jones this time out, and I'm thinking, oh God, like, hopefully this works out because obviously Watanabe was out of the
I
league
mean,
now.
Jones is a more proven
Of course.
NBA
No,
player than Watanabe. So, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I agree with you in that we thought Watanabe was going to be a great fit for
yeah.
them in what he did in Brooklyn. But, yeah, Jones is a much
That's
better.
the thing. Like, Drew Eubanks didn't really work out. I remember Caden Bates Diop thinking, oh yeah, like a defensive wing, like, that makes sense. So just because, like, again, I do think Jones is going to excel, but like every one of Monty Morris and like there's no guarantee Allen or even O'Neal are going to be as good as they were last season. So again, a bit like the Warriors, Mason Plumlee's 34. Like, again, is he better than Eubanks? I think so, but like, how much better than Drew Eubanks? I mean, I don't think it's pushing you much further. So, yeah, like a bit like the Warriors, they made moves around the fringes that I do genuinely think have made them better. But like, what does that really mean?
Yeah. I think we do have glass half full approaches in the off season as
Oh
well.
yeah,
Like we think these guys are going to do something, and there's a good chance that they don't necessarily deliver what we expect. Like I'm looking at Buddy Hield at the moment. I think that's a great contract the Warriors got him on. I'm looking at a guy who's made the most threes in the league in the last 5 years. And I'm focusing more on that than I am the genuine defensive concerns that are going to arise when he's on the floor and his fit in the Warriors system, which maybe a bit more clunky than some people think, because a lot of people just see the 3-point shooting and think, yeah, great replacement for Klay Thompson, da-da-da. Anyway, are there any realistic, like we speak so much about the defensive end, are there any realistic trades that could be on the horizon for Phoenix before the start of next season or even during next season that could help them on the defensive end, or like just any moves in general?
Well, obviously being in that second apron, they can't take back a dollar more than they send out, and also they can't stack contracts together like
Yeah,
a
it makes it
Nurkic.
hard.
Well, it makes it very difficult.
Mm.
I don't think they could convince anyone to take Nurkic, and I think it's about $17 million. I don't think they can. I think Allen now becomes interesting, Grayson Allen, as a trade candidate because he's being squeezed out of the starting lineup, at least for now. You could make the case Royce O'Neal's the sixth man, and if Monty Morris all of a sudden becomes the backup wing, like where does that leave Grayson Allen, who led the league in 3-point shooting last season? He's on a 4-year, $70 million deal, and he shot 46.1% from deep last season. Like a lot of teams, a lot of teams talk themselves into that. And he's 28 as well. So of the realistic trade candidates to get better, he's the one I would pick. I think again, a lot of fans wish Nurkic was the person in that position, but I just don't think he's going to be. And O'Neal as well. But then you're talking about Okogie and Nazir Little. They each make around $8 million this coming season. Maybe a little bit less. Like it's
And given
hard.
you can't aggregate them, it's
Like what are you getting back that really like you're not getting an Alex Caruso style player, which that'd be great, but like that doesn't exist for the Suns. So it's difficult. So they're left taking another swinger on ball, which is fun, but what else is it?
Can I, if you're talking about that $8 million salary, can I
Yes.
tempt you in Kevon Looney if you need a more defensive minded setup?
You actually, honestly, if that somehow happened, a lot of Suns fans would talk them. I'd talk myself into that.
Yeah.
I would have talked myself into James Wiseman. I think I tried to at some point during the offseason. So, you know what I mean? 100%.
Imagine Wiseman and Bol on the same roster. Goodness me, that'd be interesting.
Yes.
All right, let's jump in more into the Pacific Division. More broadly rather than just the Suns. So all 5 teams in the Pacific last season won between 46 and 51 games. Hugely competitive, and looks like it's going to be pretty competitive again next season. Are you putting, like, for the 5 teams, are you putting the Suns on top of the division? And like, if so, who do you view as the biggest competitor to winning the Pacific next season?
Believe it or not, the Clippers. Now I know they've just lost, obviously, Paul George, but still the Clippers. And I don't know.
Really?
I just think they're going to surprise us. I know Kawhi is not who he was at all anymore, and it's quite sad to see. Actually, like I wish he was, but yeah, they're still the team. I don't know what it is about the Lakers. I say I'm not worried, but like they're going nowhere, and it's actually a bit sad. I think that LeBron's like career could possibly end in just first round exits or play-in exits going forward. So maybe I'm wrong to not worry about them as much. The Warriors and the Suns, I think, are in similar positions. I do, but I think at this moment, the three stars that the Suns have, is it a little bit more firepower than the Warriors? Would you politely disagree with me there?
No, definitely. I mean, that's the whole reason. Like the Warriors are on the lookout to use the Suns have used all their future assets and any young assets and whatever they had to go get KD. Then they got Beal, obviously, and the Warriors are in a different situation where they've still got all their young assets, players, and they've still got all their most of their future draft picks. They are in the position now to go and get a second star, whether it be Markkanen or whoever else becomes available. So, yeah, I mean, there's some similarities there, but there's also quite a lot of differences in how this roster is built. Like the Warriors have a quartet of young players in Kuminga, Podziemski, Moody, and Jackson Davis, and the first two of those, especially, fans and even the team, Joe Lacob as the owner is talking about those top two guys in Podziemski and Kuminga as future All Stars, and so they've got some internal development that can happen here next season, rather than just having to necessarily trade for a second star. As you look at the Suns roster and what young guys are going to suddenly take a jump next season and be drastically better than.
You don't think Ball could be an All-Star, no?
I've been waiting for it for a few years now. It just hasn't quite developed.
No, I know they obviously they've got two rookies, Ryan Dunn and also Iguodala, and then signed Jalen Bridges, an undrafted player. I watched a lot of Summer League. Are they going to want too much of them too soon? Just because they need some young player to do something to convince maybe everybody that there's a bridge to the future beyond where we're at right now. So
don't worry, the Warriors tried that. It hasn't really worked too well.
Yeah, the dual timelines. Who could forget? Who could forget that era, man?
Yeah. I mean, we're still in it, technically. We're still the Warriors, as I said, we're just outlined those quartet of players that the Warriors don't appear overly keen on giving up Podziemski for Markkanen. I actually think if the Warriors went to Danny Ainge in Utah and said, here's Podziemski and Moody and a couple of picks, I actually think the Jazz would take it. I do, but I think it's Golden State not wanting to give up Podziemski, not just because of how valuable he is already as a player who, he's already shown he's a solid rotation player at the very least who can play 25 minutes a game. And I'm not convinced on him ever being a star, but it sounds like him and the team are pretty convinced on him developing into a star. It's not only that, but it's the contract. And when you're talking about this era of, first tax apron, second tax apron, having a guy who has already, as I said, shown himself to be a 25-minute rotation player, if you've got him under contract for another 3 years, $13 million total, that's just incredibly valuable to have on your roster in this day and age. So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Clippers before there. Where does that thinking come from that you think? Because, I don't know, I'm kind of the opposite direction because you see the injury history of Kawhi and you think that, okay, I mean, they got a fairly healthy, he was reasonably healthy last season, wasn't he? Him and Paul George, compared to what they'd been, the history would suggest he's probably missing a bunch of games again next season. Do you have faith in Harden ball, still?
Well,
as a guy that even if Kawhi's out of the lineup, he could just be putting up 30-point triple doubles and leading the Clippers to random wins.
Yeah, as I sort of said it, and then we moved on, I thought to myself, the prospect of James Harden going, well, I guess it's up to me again, and just sort of doing Harden ball. That doesn't fill me with a ton of confidence. Maybe because I feel like I've been a little bit negative about the Suns' outlook. Is it ridiculous or not ridiculous? I do think the Suns can win the division, and maybe they should be viewed as the favorites. I think I almost picked the Clippers by default, but I still think they're going to surprise us by being a little bit more competitive than we think. That's the first season in a new arena. If not that a new arena can make you play better basketball, but just I don't know. I still think we haven't. There's something more to be said about them. They're not going to win a championship or anything, but they'll be all right during the regular season.
I before we go any further, I do want to mention. I did say on last episode that I'd update viewers about my social league game on Tuesday night, and our team we have to wear red. Can wear any red we want, and the only red jersey I own is a Harden Rockets jersey, right? So I've been repping that in our first couple of games, And I actually had a guy come up to me and ask me from the other team, like, "Oh, do you love James Harden? Do you?" And I was like, "No, not really. Just have like he's the only red jersey I've got. I've got a couple of fake MJ ones, but I assumed someone was going to take 23 already. They didn't." But it was quite funny because we were playing a team the other night. We put up 25 total points in a 40-minute game. It was possibly the worst offense you've ever seen. Equal top score with 8 points, but it was very ugly. There was one point I went for a pull-up baseline jump shot, and all of a sudden I got blocked from behind by a kid who I'm pretty sure was 14. Might have been like Muggsy Bogues' height, like 5'3" to 5'5". I'm not huge, but I shouldn't be getting blocked by a 13, 14-year-old kid. And one of my teammates came up to me after the game and he said, that pull-up jump shot on the baseline, you got blocked from behind by that young kid. And I said, yeah. He's like, that was like, looked exactly like when Harden got blocked by Ginobili. Remember? From behind
Yes.
in that like buzzer-beating attempt.
Yes.
Was it like 7-8 years ago in the playoffs kind of thing? And I was wearing a James Harden jersey and I'm left-handed. So, it was probably one of the most embarrassing things that's ever happened to me on the sporting field or court, whatever. Anyway, back to it. We haven't mentioned the Kings as part of all this. What did you like? There's a lot of different chatter about the DeRozan move. Are you big on how do you feel about them getting DeMar DeRozan?
Well, of all the NBA players in the world, DeMar DeRozan is the only other player I've ever met by chance, actually, in LA. Shook his hand as he walked past me, which is pretty cool. So for that reason, maybe I have to like him. But no, I've actually always been and like the move. But no, I've always been a fan of his game. He might be one of my favorite players to just watch. But what it does for the Kings, nothing for me. That's probably a reason I didn't even mention there. But maybe I'm doing Sabonis and Fox a disservice by just completely blanking them, because the Light the Beam season was fun. I think Sabonis is an excellent player, like an excellent basketball player. And Fox similarly is brilliant, man. If Fox was in Tyus Jones' position now, this would be a different conversation. So I think they're going to be good. I think DeRozan's 34, 35 at this stage. And although he kind of diversified his game a little bit from the mid-range when he was in San Antonio before going to Chicago, yeah, I don't see it myself. But am I being too dismissive?
No, I feel the same. And maybe this is generally just what I think of the Kings, because I remember doing a preview episode before last season. And I think I had them 9th or 10th in the West. And there was a YouTube video that went up about it afterwards. And then for some reason, just had a bunch of Kings fans in the YouTube comments. And I was kind of really dismissive and harsh on people talking about Sasha Vezenkov and how he was going to be a difference maker, and all these Kings fans in the comments oh, we got the EuroLeague MVP, watch out, this and that. I'm like, really? That's not necessarily going to translate to the NBA. And sure enough, Sasha Vezenkov played one season, wasn't great, and now has ducked off back to Europe. Good on him.
Yeah.
No worries there. But Kings fans were telling me that he was going to be a huge difference maker and whatever else. And obviously it's different when we're talking about DeMar DeRozan, who's a proven 6-time All-Star and stuff like that. But I've spoke about I think what he brings to the table also brings a lot of question marks in terms of fit when you've got him and Sabonis and Fox. Their starting lineup, Fox can shoot the three, is certainly improved in that area over the last couple of years. He's 33% on his career from 3-point range. Sabonis doesn't really shoot threes. Will shoot the odd one here and there. DeRozan, the same. It means you kind of got to start Kevin Huerter probably for that shooting threat alongside Keegan Murray. And, Kevin Huerter's been involved in a lot of trade rumors and stuff like that. I like what Keon Ellis did at the end of last season. Is he starting in that team? I don't know. I'm like you. I don't think DeRozan to the Kings is making too much of a difference, and maybe I'm just too dismissive of them because it's how I generally reflect on the Kings, who are maybe a bit of a baby brother to the Warriors kind of thing, and you kind of just cast them aside and say, yeah, cool, you'll be great, you'll have fun, whatever else, but you won't actually be doing too much. And maybe it's that, but I also just don't really see it like you. So,
Sorry, just
Yeah,
in
go
case
on.
Kings fans want to just have a go at me, and I think I said it the last time I was on. The first jersey I ever owned was a Mike Bibby Kings jersey, and it was kind of because of those teams against the Lakers that I got into basketball. So please don't be too harsh on me. I do have a soft spot for the Kings. I promise. I just don't see it.
Okay, fair enough. They can have a go at me because I've got most teams' jerseys, like a jersey from most teams, and the Kings aren't one of them. I could go like I like De'Aaron Fox. I could get a De'Aaron Fox
That purple
jersey.
doesn't do it for you, know that purple man. You can't beat that purple.
Um, all right, let's finish there. Let's talk a bit about the Warriors before we finish up. Any thoughts on their off-season, losing Clay, the additions they've made, losing Chris Paul, Dario Saric, whoever you want to talk about?
God, your two former sons there as well. So Sarich and Paul,
Yeah,
two
true.
I would take back. Not that I thought it was ever going to happen, but I would have taken both of them back if it was possible. I guess just I really thought there was a moment there where Markkanen was going to happen, and Pajemski seemed to become sort of the sticking point, or at least that's what it looked like. I was going to ask you earlier, but we sort of circled back to it. If you were in that position, would you give up Pajemski and whatever else it might be, picks and whoever to get Markkanen?
It depends on what the picks are. It depends. If I'm giving up pods, I'm probably I don't know. I've spoken a bit about this on the podcast. I don't recall a time previously where a young player's stock or value has soared as much from him not playing. Like he played 3 summer league games. Cool, it's summer league. You expect him after being all rookie first team last season. You expect him to come out and dominate summer league. Like it is what it is. That doesn't mean too much to me.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of last season, we were like, yeah, cool, great rookie season. Couldn't have asked for much more. Solid rotation play. Do I ever think he's going to be a star? Probably not. And then, like, he hasn't played an actual NBA game for over 3 months, and now he's the sticking point to a guy that was an all-star 2 years ago. And you got the franchise and Joe Lacob coming out. Yeah, we think we've got a future all-star on our hands. And it's amazing how much his stock and value has risen in the offseason. And I think that's probably what happens sometimes when young guys are involved in trade rumors. But there's also been a push of, hey, this isn't just the franchise increasing the value of their own player for trade purposes. This is actually the franchise thinking this is like they've got an all-star, future all-star on their hands. So what I say now would have been totally different to what I said a month ago, because the value of pods seems to have drastically changed in that time. So a month ago, I would have said, yeah, throw in pods and all the picks, and you can have Moody as well, and we'll have Markkanen. And now it's like, okay, if you want pods, then it's not going to be all the picks. It's like maybe 2 firsts, no swaps, like pods, 2 firsts. Like Moody probably plays a part in it as well. And I've looked at some different trade proposals because a lot of this stuff he just gets automatically thrown into. And there are a lot of Warrior fans who think he can still be a player in this league. And I think a lot of rival fans should see him as a guy that could be gettable at a cheaper price than what he could develop into for you. So he's part of it as well. And like, is it pods, Moody, and 2 firsts? Maybe. But the other issue is like, if they, and going back to the Tyus Jones conversation we had at the very start, if the Warriors lose pods, who's their backup point guard? And at this point, like they would desperately, they wouldn't have another point guard on the roster outside Steph, aside from
Isaiah
Reese
Thomas
Beekman.
is out there, man.
Sorry, Isaiah Thomas.
I think he's. You think he's good for a team?
Yeah, no thanks. But no, like seriously, it's I think they needed to add another point guard, even in addition to pods, because he was more of a 2 guard last season. Is like at this stage more of a combo guard. Yes, we saw it in Summer League, and he played really well, and his playmaking was excellent in Summer League. But we, going into next season, having him as your backup point guard it's going in blind. You've never seen it before. You've never seen him run an NBA offense before. And I'm sure there's going to be part of it where they're like, okay, well, if we play him in the bench unit alongside Draymond a little bit and alongside Kyle Anderson as these kind of point forwards, then that will kind of soften the blow a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. Like, do you, from an outside perspective, do you think the Warriors are completely? Because I'm sure a lot of people outside of this would think Brandon Bajemski, really, like that's the hold up for Markkanen. What are the Warriors doing? Is that your perspective?
Uh, a little bit, but then again, it's always so easy when you're far removed from, you think about the Warriors every day. It's easy to go, well, why wouldn't you just throw him in because Markkinen makes you better immediately, and I think in truth gets you closer to contention. So like, why wouldn't you do that? But then 5 years from now, when Pajemski's made his third All Star team, and you're going, God, that would have been a great bridge from the Stephen Curry era. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard, and it's hard. I would still do it right now, but again, that's just because it's easy for me to say that. And that actually, I had another question for you. That's sort of off the back of that. Again, it's really easy when you're not following a team to say, well, if you can't win it all and you're not the worst team in the league, which clearly the Warriors are not why don't you blow it up, but where do you go from here? Now, I do realize like Steph Curry's never going to get traded. You sell tickets, he'll sell out arenas for the rest of his career. So, I don't like not that anything drastic is going to happen, but like, where did the Warriors go in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, and that's what they'll be talking and like discussing internally, because yes, they've got Steph, and it's easy for us as fans to say, Steph is still somewhere near his prime. He's also 36 years old. You've got to maximize this while you can. But I can also understand Joe Lacob saying, hang on a second, like I own this team. I want to make money after Steph retires. I need to have a decent product in order to do that. So I want to keep some of these young guys and want to keep some of my future picks and not sacrifice everything for a chance of winning it next season and then being trash down the line. So that's the balance of it. That's the balance. And that's why I think there probably is a middle ground to be found with the Jazz where you say, okay, we'll relinquish Pajemski, but we're not giving you everything else of our future. We're keeping some of our picks here. Kuminga sounds like isn't going to be part of the deal because the Jazz or other teams don't necessarily have don't have the motivation to pay him what he's likely to command as an extension eligible player this offseason, where it sounds like he could want in excess of, I've started at 120, sounds like it could be a lot more than that, it could be 140, 150. He's looking at the max contracts that guys like Franz Wagner have been getting, who was a pick after him, and who I rightfully think if Kuminga had been given the rope and the leeway to play as much as a guy like Franz Wagner has in his first 3 seasons, we could be talking about him as just as good a player, if not a better player than Franz Wagner. So if I'm Kuminga, I'm rightly looking at that and saying, yeah, if he's getting a max, let's see what I can do in my 4th year. If you're giving me 30 minutes a game, I reckon I can be a max guy too. Now, we can argue whether Franz Wagner should be getting a max in the first place, but that's just what happens sometimes these days with these rookies entering their 4th season. So, I think there's a balance to be found ultimately, but it also just sounds like there's been nothing reported that suggests that the Warriors are willing to include Pajemski in any way. And as a result, it just sounds everything is pointing towards Markkanen extending with the Jazz, and most likely after August 6th to make sure that he's there for the full season rather than being trade eligible on February 6th.
I don't think we've got time to go into the whole Franz Wagner debate you've proposed there, because I am actually an Orlando Magic fan. So I have a lot of thoughts on that, but that's okay. We might have to politely agree to disagree on the Wagner Kuminga comparisons, because I am a big fan of his now. He regressed quite a lot last season, but we're not here to talk about that.
Well, quickly. This is the last thing. The Magic off season, bringing in KCP. What's the expectations for them next season?
Oh, it would be cool if like the Cleveland series was fun. I thought for a minute they might win it, but I think everyone sees that as a successful season.
Yeah.
I think Jamal Mosley, I think that was his 3rd season. I'm delighted he's been given the time to just try and make something work there. It looks like he's really built an identity, culture, defensively very strong. And the addition to KCP is a kind of like Klay Thompson light, like a version of what Klay does. Like 3-point shooting is where the Magic have really struggled in recent years, and they haven't had that like release valve, because I think Paolo's brilliant. He's still young, but he truly is. I think the sky is the limit for him. And I think Franz is an excellent, as of now, second player. But KCP is just that veteran who's got it done on two different teams and is an elite 3-point shooter on his day. So I think he's a great pickup, to be honest.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we'll finish it up there. Luke, thank you for giving me so much of your time. Is there anything that you want to shout out or anything before you head off, social media or anything like that?
No, I'm on Luca Lockhart, which is a strange Twitter handle, I know, or X handle. That's where you can find me if you want to disagree with me about the Suns or the Kings or the Magic or anything. I'm up for talking about anything, anytime. Or hurling, if anyone had any interest in that whatsoever. Come to DM me, I'll tell you all about it. And Valley of the Suns is where you'll find the stuff I'm writing as well.
Yeah, I'm sure like the off season is now a few minutes. How long until hurling starts back up again?
So again, won't go into too much detail, but there's like club and county, so it's kind of back to club season now, which not that it's less important, but it's kind of 12 months, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try and get into it, but I'm also not sure how I'm gonna be able to watch games or.
We'll do a watch party next year, All Ireland final day live on here. You and me, man, because O'Keefe, the surname is like it's a hurling surname, and I'm not just saying that. You find that in Munster, Cork, Waterford, a little bit of Limerick. That's a hurling surname, man.
This is why I'm here doing this podcast and not a professional athlete, because if I actually grew up in Ireland, I'm probably playing hurling and I'm pushing it to the degree of, hey, this guy's that good. We need to make this professional. He needs to be paid for this stuff. I've missed out on my calling. I feel it's very disappointing. But other than that, thanks again for coming on, and I'm sure I'll have you on sometime again, middle of next season, when the KD trade rumors heat up some more, and we can talk about him coming to the Warriors.
When KD's with the Rockets and Markkanen's still in Utah, I can't wait.
All righty, thanks, mate.
See you, Bennett. Thanks.